Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. This afternoon, you've joined the part 2 of the Gmap EANS 2 application webinar. What we are going to focus on today is navigating through the system, the Gmap system, for the second part of the application, which will allow you to do several things, including denote the impacts of COVID-19 on your school.
Test positive is 2 days
previous. To give us some information about participation in previous emergency funded programs, and to actually budget for the activities and items that you are foreseeing as your needs. So I'm going to start by sharing the step-by-step document, which I sent out yesterday as an attachment to your email that says, hey, you're qualified to participate. Here's a document that's going to serve you. So hopefully you'll find that very useful. I just want to kind of scroll through that, and then we're going to get into the Gmap system and take a look at the actual application. And then what we'll do is we'll take some questions. We'll stop for questions here and there, and if you have them, you can use the chat box to put those questions in. And kind of like we did last time, Lease and Kay will help me go through those questions, and we'll answer everything the best we can today. If we have to get back with you at some point, we'll make sure to do that as well. So any question today about the second part of the application, the activities that are allowed, any of that stuff is fair game. So as you see, I created a document that is a step-by-step, just like I did for the first part. Really, this document is a little bit longer. The good thing to know about navigating through this part of the application is navigation is exactly the same. So a couple reminders. The save and go to buttons at the top of your screens are your friends. Those help to save your work and navigate back and forth between the application pages. Remember that if you were to use your browser's forward or back buttons, any work that you had done on a page you're navigating from, you'll potentially lose that work. So remember to use your save and go to buttons as you're navigating. The other thing to keep in mind is that 60-minute countdown timer, which appears on every page. It's in the lower left-hand side of the page. You'll see it right under the left-hand menu. That timer does reset itself every time you hit the save and go to button. And as you're saving your work, it resets itself. Again, that timer is just a safety feature. So if you were to walk away from your desk or forget that you have the application up on your screen, it's going to log you off after 60 minutes to preserve safety. Doesn't allow other people to log in and get into your application. I will say that if you let that timer run out, again, the page that you're on, if you have not saved that work, it is going to delete the work that you had, the data that you had put in. But it does reset every time you hit save and go to. So from there, the step-by-step gets into the parts and pieces of the application itself, starting from where you log on. This link is live. So in that document, you can just click there and it's going to open up your browser. It's going to talk or walk you through signing in, just like you did in the intent to participate. Remember that at some point you had probably changed your login credentials. If you have forgotten what those are, you can actually reset those through a link that's right below this sign in button. I do want to remind you that, as you see right here, I am looking at and pulled these screenshots from a test version of the site that you're going to be working on through this link. It is called the production site, and that's where your work is going to be done. So the sign in, pretty simple. I'm going to walk you through where to find each one of these things. You know, it's a little bit different. Last time you clicked on application supplements, this time you're going to funding applications. So keep in mind that, pay attention to those screenshots as you're walking through. Pretty much up to this point, through changing the status, just like you did last time, the steps are pretty much the same. You're going to be changing the status in order to begin completing your work. And then once you are finished and have saved everything, you're going to return there in the end to change the status to completed. And that step is the very last one. Again, I'll walk you through each of these sections, but the sections there are a few other sections than just a single page this time. Several things you'll have to complete. Really the purpose and introduction, and I'll show you this piece by piece. The purpose and introduction does not have anything to complete. It just outlines the allowable types of activities, the purpose of the program, eligibility criteria, those types of things. The assurances is really simple. Program details, pretty simple as well. And then the budget is probably the most complicated piece, which will require most of your work within this application. So each of the following steps just kind of walks you through each piece of the application, and I've highlighted each piece where you have to complete something, provide some information. Okay, so each of those places is signified here by a bullet and an arrow. The bullet will give you some instructions, some direction on what to complete and provide. And then the budget gets, it's a little more complicated, but not too bad. We have the budget set up in two sections. You're going to be budgeting either for procurement or for staffing. Remember, this program allows for procurement only. So you're going to need to make sure that you're putting things in the right category. And then as you're going through, this is, and I'll demonstrate this, this is kind of what it's going to look like for you. It's going to have a category, an object, either an object, which is one of those allowable activities, and then quantity, cost, and a narrative. So I'll kind of walk through each one of those. Again, the last step is ensuring that you fully submit your application. And to do that, you're going to return to the sections page and use that draft completed button to change the status in clicking that confirm. And this last piece just kind of shows you that once you do that, the current application status is going to show on that sections page. So I'm going to jump into the test site real quickly, and we'll kind of spend some time going through that particular piece.
David, before you do that, can I,
Sure.
There's some questions that have to do with if I made a mistake on my intent, what do I need to do? So I didn't know if you could, well, you may be off of it, but it's that same, Penny, it's that same button where you go to change status. You would go in there, change status, start a revision. After you I think you have to select the application supplement to get back to your intent. She needs to correct some information. She was asking how to do that. So
yeah, I mean, you can yeah, exactly like Lease was saying, you'll have to go, instead of going to funding applications, you'll go to application supplements and then click on intent to participate. That should come up automatically. And right here, you can change the status to revision started and change like your contact information if that's what's needed.
And then you have to go back to that page and hit revision completed as well.
Yes, correct. For it to actually save in its current status.
The updated status. Okay. And then Christy has some questions, but I just want to double check. I told her that you were going to be covering most of these today. She's asking about when will we know our budgeted total? What is the time period covered? And what is the deadline to submit for reimbursement? So Christy, I think David just clarified that this is procurement only this round. Then do we have a list of approved vendors for procurement? And I think that we do via Allen Cold Irons Group, but I'm not sure if we're providing that today or not.
We aren't providing that today. Kay, is there a plan to provide that at a later date though?
Yes, there will be links to what the approved catalogs are for vendors that we already have agreements with.
Yeah, you may not have that readily available in time to complete the application. However, we'll talk about how to write that up in the budget narrative for now. I do want to remind everybody that there is a 3-day timeline to turn these applications around, and that's to help keep us on our approval deadline cycle, which, you know, we want to have these all approved and ready to turn around by January the 3rd. I also want to tell you that there is a 6-month deadline to have all procurements in to our budget and finance staff, which giving us some lead time to process those. We would need those by March 19th. So there's a very tight deadline. That deadline is actually statutory in nature. We may have some follow-up information about that coming up, but we're trying to kind of work through some issues with the U.S. Department of Education. But right now, keep that March 19th procurement submission deadline in mind. So once you have logged in, you're going to see this page come up. Yours is going to say, again, production. It's going to have your school name at the top. And the way you actually get to the application pages is you're going to go to funding right here and click on funding applications.
And so David, just this goes with what you're saying right now. There was one more question. Are
Sure.
the pages live at this point? Stuart wants to know. And then he says the go and save button, he can't find them.
Okay. So I'll point all those things out. You should be getting an email from a Gmail no reply box that says your allocation has been uploaded and your application is ready to go. Once you see that, and it should be coming shortly if it hasn't already to your email. Again, check your junk mail just to make sure, but we have uploaded allocations and you should be getting a notification that it's ready to go. Thelma, anything else to say about that?
Nope, that's it. Just make sure if you have not received your email, which you should have already, because it's usually as soon as the allocations are uploaded, it's there within 5 to 10 seconds, but just check your junk or clutter, because sometimes that email will go to that email box.
Yes. Yes, and I also want to remind everybody that we collected some contact data on November 5th. The person that was submitted as the contact and that completed the intent is the same person that would have access to go in, change the status, complete the application, and move it along. That doesn't mean you can't work with other folks in the building or the school system, but that person would have to do the inputting of things. So once you reach this page, it should automatically default to 2022 and active applications. You'll see several things on this page. You'll see your intent to participate right here under additional. You'll see EANS 1, which you can ignore that for right now. And then you'll see emergency assistance to non-public schools 2, or EANS 2, and that is the one that you're going to want to select. That will take you directly to the sections page. And what I'm not seeing here is I am not seeing the allocations link. However, I'll tell you how you can find your allocations. You should be able to go to the budget page and see that your allocation is loaded here. Okay. So I will tell you, we only had, I think, 59 schools qualify under this grant. The allocations were made in a similar way as the first round. We split the allocation in half, created a PPA, a per pupil amount for low income students and a PPA for total enrollment. Applied that to each school's count submitted through the intent to participate, and then those two amounts totaled ended up being your total allocation. Okay, so you can find that again on the budget page if you're not seeing the allocations link from the sections page. I'm going to go back to the sections page. Again, there are just a few pages to complete here. I'm going to work, oh, here it is. I think this is it right here. I was looking for different language, so you can click that one too. It will tell you your amount as well. So I'm going to start from the sections page. First thing you need to do is when you are ready to complete the application is you are going to have to change the status from the sections page. That navigates the same way it did in the intent. You're going to click on draft started. It tells you you're about to change the status. If you want to, click confirm. It takes you back to the sections page. You're going to notice that the current application's status is draft started. That means you're ready to roll. So you can start with purpose and introduction. And just to point out the save and go to or go to, the buttons are going to be up here. They're either labeled save and go to or go to. So you'll notice that on this page, this is the purpose and introduction. Again, like I said, it just kind of walks you through the purpose of the program, the allowable types of assistance or services, and some participation or eligibility requirements here. Okay, nothing to complete, but I highly recommend that you read through each of these sections on this page. Again, you're not going to see anything about reimbursement here because this is a procurement only program. So keep that in mind as you're working through the application. So you can use go to on this page to navigate to the next page, which takes you to assurances. These assurances are pretty much the same as the assurances from the first round. So would highly recommend reading through each one of these. We've had a couple questions come in about those. And if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out as you read through. The only thing you have to do on this page after you read is click a box that says you certify that you will abide by the assurances. Okay, everything from the data is accurate and true down through the last one. There's something about that, a non-discrimination clause, essentially. Once you click that box, you're done with this particular page. So you can, in this case, you see it says save and go to because I essentially entered some data here with this checkbox. So save and go to the next page. So the data on that page is saved once I've hit save and go to, and that will bring you to the next page. And I'm going to stop real quick just to see, Elise, if there are any questions that have come up so far.
Yes, Leanne asks, our equitable services staffing, or does that also include reimbursement and EANS? And it's got a little I1. So Leanne, I think, is just asking, will staffing be included in EANS too?
Yes, staffing is something you can budget for.
That's right. And there are no reimbursements in EANS 2, Leanne,
Correct.
and EANS 1 and EANS
Correct.
2 are two separate programs. Jennifer O'Reilly asks, how will we be able to complete the budget without approved vendors?
So right now we would ask you to give us some estimated costs. You could research costs based on what you can find on Google or other shopping platforms. That would be my requirement or my suggestion right now, I should say. I would not worry about having the exact amount that that you want to spend or a quote from a vendor at this point. So use, if you're shopping for technology, go to Best Buy, look at, find what you're looking for there. If you're looking for iPads and they're $500 a piece and you need 10 of those, budget for $5,000 right now. Later on, as we go through the master agreement list and say we have to purchase from these, just like we've done these providers, just like we did in the first round, we're going to have to make some adjustments in the budget here and there. So right now, I think that's the most prudent way to accomplish your budget. Kay, do you have any other tips on that for now?
No, I would just use your best knowledge about things that you might want procured. Most of the time, the master agreements will get you at least that price, if not a little better, although sometimes our products are a little more enhanced than what you may be used to and may cost slightly more. But we will be working with you as those specific requests come in to make sure that you stay within your budget allocation.
Yeah, kind of like the process we've been using under EANS 1. It's just in a different platform. So thank you, Kay.
So David, and Kay, I just want to clarify, because Alan provided a link to the MOA in the last webinar in the slide deck. Is that not an MOA that they could use as a form of guidance?
Sure. I'm not sure that his slide deck made it to the web page though, because it was not ADA compliant.
Oh, okay.
So let me double check that, and if not, we can get that sent out pretty quickly.
Okay. And then Stephanie, and she may not be the only one, I haven't received an email. I checked my junk mail as well. So Stephanie, I'll follow up with you and Thelma after this meeting, if that's okay.
Elise,
yes.
The email notification is merely an email stating the application has been uploaded. You may log in. If you have a login, you can go to gmap.education.ky.gov and you can log in. Yes. So the email notification just states that the allocation has been uploaded and the application is available. So if you just go to the Gmap website and click on the sign in and sign in with your login, you will have access to your application.
Yeah, just to clarify, it doesn't include any additional links for, logging in a different manner. So
correct. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's about maybe 15 or so who are saying they haven't gotten the email, but if you have already done your intent, then what Thelma is saying is you can log in. Okay, Penny circled back and said, since my numbers were wrong and I need to readjust, will my allocation change?
Possibly. Let's maybe we may need to talk about that offline a little bit, but possibly.
Okay. For employment with Ovec, will Ovec still be used? Katie wants to know.
At this time, we are pursuing an extension of, or actually a new contract with Ovec to deliver those similar services for EANS 2. They have indicated they are amenable to that contract, and we will let you know as soon as we get confirmation on that.
Okay, one more question here. Well, there may be a few more. What is the time frame for using the budgeted items if we need to include procurement by March?
So, Kay, and you can correct me here, but to use the items, we're going to follow the same. Depending on what it is, you can contract for example, for staffing through the end of the grant term, computers and things of that nature. Just like with the first round, you could continue to use those until they reach the end of their useful life. You know, they break down, or until they're no longer needed. Same goes for, you know, materials you might want for the classroom, things of that nature.
Okay, let's see. And then some people have noticed they've gotten in and they've been able to see their budgeted or their allocation. Miranda is saying that when she logs in to put in program details, the boxes are grayed out and will not let me enter information. When will this be live, or should it already be live?
Say that again, Elise.
Basically,
David.
it sounds like Miranda can't enter anything right this very minute. She wants to know when will it be live.
So as stated on the instructions, you have to change the status to started.
Oh, that's right. You have
Yes,
to go change
follow
the
those
status.
instructions that David provided, and you must change the status to access and open the application.
Thank you, Thelma. Cindy wants to know, what is the term of this grant?
Kay, correct me if I'm wrong. This grant ends in 2024.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know the final date on that?
I believe it's an October 1 as well.
Okay.
Okay, and then one last one, David, and then we'll let you move on. If we are using a contractor for air purification systems, when would they need to start or complete the work? So Monica, you're good. KDE will procure and get that person to do that, correct, David?
Yeah, and as far as completing the work, we need to have a contract in place. We have to have those funds obligated essentially by March 19th. If the work goes on beyond that, that's okay, but we have to have that procured, or at least, you know, a contract in place to have that started. Is that it, Elise?
Can someone put the term of the grant in writing, please? I missed it. So, Kay, tell me again, what did you say, October?
So that will be on the final notice of what do we call it? Assistance award and a service, or whatever it is.
Yes.
On that final notice, all of those particular details will be there. And I would intend, and I will be providing subsequent information once we get closer to the January timeframe when you can actually start making the procurement requests, about the timelines that you need to meet.
Okay, one last one, David. Christy wants to know, what if we cannot use our entire allocated amount?
So we are suggesting right now that you budget for the entire amount. Actually, this system is going to require you to budget down to zero. So try your hardest to budget for that. If that is an issue, let's get in contact in the next day or two before the due date lapses. But that would be my suggestion for right now, is to try to think about how you could use the entire allocation and try to budget it down to zero.
Okay, and then Christy followed up with, where do we find the allocation amount in Gmap? I think you had shown that on a previous page, David, in sections.
Sorry, I was muted. I'll go back to sections. You can find it here in the assistant service budget amount, clicking on that, or you can find it in the budget page as well. You can find it at the bottom of your budget page.
Okay, that's it for right now, David. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go back to the program details. In the program details, you're going to see several things: contact information, enrollment and low income information, Small Business Act loan information, an impact of COVID-19 narrative, and previous services under other Emergency Act programs. So starting at the top, the top two pieces of information are supposed to be downloaded and downloaded from the intent and uploaded here by our vendor. If you run into something that is not uploaded, let us know as soon as you can. If it's this top part, you can fill it in yourself. You know, you can click through and you know, put your information in. If it is this part, we'll need to have the vendor upload that for you. These two parts may stop you from submitting the application, so we need to know as soon as you find out that it's not there. But it should be there for nearly everybody at this point. Our vendor was working on that yesterday to download and upload. I know we worked, Elise worked kind of late with some folks to review some of the data. So for you folks, you may need to get in touch with us. However, if that's missing, you can still complete the rest of this page and the other pages as well. So that part should be there for you. If not, let us know. The next section is a simple checkbox. If you have participated in Small Business Act loans prior to the issuance of the American Rescue Plan. So if you participated in Small Business Act loan programs under the first round or during the first round, let's say, you would check this box and you'd have to expand it to enter an amount of whatever the loan amount was. I'm going to say $10,000. Okay. And that's it for that particular part. I will tell you, we were going to use this in case we needed to use that for allocation purposes to kind of target funds to those people that had not been served, but since had not been served under the SBA or the other Emergency Act programs. However, we don't see the need for that right now, but we still are going to require you to fill it out as part of the application. That was one of the requirements in the application and the statutory requirements in the application. So we'll have you fill that out if it applies. The next part is going to apply to everyone, and that is describing the impact of COVID-19 on the non-public schools. So things you might consider as an impact could be loss of tuition revenue, decrease enrollment, lack of capacity to provide remote learning, data documenting the extent of learning loss. It could be really any type of need that resulted as an impact of COVID-19. So, you know, you're going to have to provide us a narrative here. This narrative is pretty important because we are going to be reviewing these applications and taking a look at whether or not your proposed expenditures really align with that impact, as well as whether or not they're under the allowable cost categories. So you will have to provide a narrative here. I'm just going to put something quick. We would prefer something to be a little longer than this in narrative sentence form, but just to allow us to get through the application. I'm going to put something short there, tuition loss. And then the last two questions, they want to know whether or not you participated in equitable services through a district under the CARES Act, or whether or not you participated under the first round of EANS. So these are pretty simple. You're either going to check yes or no. And those are required questions as well.
Hey, David, while you're on this page, before you move on,
Sure.
back up there on the loans, Debbie wants to know, is this a PPP loan?
Yes, that could be the PPP loan. Yes.
Okay, and then Christy said, is the LEA CARES Act the PPP?
No, the LEA CARES Act is not the PPP. The CARES Act under the LEA would have been services for your school, sort of like what we're providing here. So you would have had consultation with the district. They would have provided services for you. So that's either a yes or no. Anything else, Elise, on this one?
Nope, not on that page.
Okay. So once that's complete, you're going to hit save and go, and you can go to the next page. Okay. Which is your budget page. And this is the last page, but it probably is going to require the most amount of work for you. You'll kind of get into, once you navigate to the page, you'll come to sort of like a budget landing page. This is it. So you'll see that we have two categories here to budget in. So newly requested assistance through procurement, or whether or not you're going to be requesting staffing. You do not have to budget in both categories. You can do either or you can do both, depending on what your needs are. But you'll notice it is going to, as you start entering things, it's going to start keeping track of your budgeted amount and what's remaining on this page. And the way you start entering budget information is you're going to click on whichever appropriate category you're going into. I'm just going to do an example in procurement. You'll click modify, which brings you to the budget detail page. So there's nothing here right now, but there will be. What you're going to do is you're going to start entering your budget details. The way you do that is add a budget detail here. Okay. You'll notice that you can really designate it as staffing or procurement right here, but it's, you know, I clicked on procurement, so it defaults to procurement in this drop down. So you'll see that. The next thing is you're going to select your category. I'm just going to go with, and these are the allowable categories, I'm just going to stick with supplies to sanitize and disinfect. There's really nothing to do with this drop down. You know, if we were working with districts, sometimes they budget at individual school levels and they can select those schools from here, but it's just set to your school. The narrative description. So let's say you want hand sanitizer. Okay, that's a pretty simple example. How many hand sanitizers do you want? Well, I want 10 cases of sanitizer. The cost, individual cost, let's just say they're $100 per case. Okay. It's going to calculate the total amount for this particular item. Okay. We do want you to, every time you have a separate type of item, to enter that as a separate item. Okay, so I've created hand sanitizer here. You've noticed it's calculated the cost. I put in 10 at $100. Total for the budget so far is $1,000, and it will keep track of your remaining budget right here. Okay, so I'm going to create this item. Okay. Same thing over here. It tells you the total for the individual item. It keeps track of your budget and remaining budget. If I want to add something else under procurement, I can add it again right here. Okay, so same screen pops up. Create your budget detail. I'm going to say this time I want reasonable transportation costs. Well, I'm going to leave this quantity as 1, okay, and I'm going to just budget for those as a total cost. So I want $10,000 is what I'm going to budget for. Again, it keeps up with your total line item amount, and it starts to subtract it again from your remaining balance. Again, you create, well, got to put in the narrative, transportation for social distancing. And then I'm going to create. Again, it keeps an ongoing list of those things. Here's my transportation, and it keeps up with my budget remaining balances as well. Would like to say that if you know that you're going to want technology, for example, and you want a certain model with certain specifications, that in your narratives as you're creating those, you give us as much detail as possible. That goes for any type of item outside of, outside of transportation maybe. But if you know you have a company that you would like to contract and you have a quote for them already, detail would be useful here as well. So any detail you can give us on the type of product that you want or the type of service that you want, we would ask you to put that detail in here as well. So this system does a lot of the work for you. I think it is pretty easy to use, especially once you get in there and start creating those budget details. Once you're totally done with putting things in, you hit return, and it just takes you to the budget landing page, okay? So it has, for this particular category, kept up with your running costs, and again, your remaining balance as well. Okay, same thing goes for the staffing side. You click modify, you create your details, and make an estimate of staffing costs that you are asking us to procure. Use your own salary schedules just like we did last time for procuring or for estimating costs for staffing and benefits. Use your own, whatever your own salary schedules are or hourly rates are, use those as an estimates. Like we said before, you are not going to be locked into this budget because as we go through the purchasing process, the posting process, those costs may change up and down a little bit, and we'll be able to walk you through making changes within the budget to accommodate for that, just like we've done before. So I'm going to stop right there. That's a pretty simple walkthrough of the budget. Those step-by-step pages will help walk you through each one of those steps in completing this budget. And you're always free to reach out if you're having trouble or need some extra assistance with walking through. What do we have on the question side, Elise?
Okay, well, after you discussed the PPP, some people asked about, is the PPP loan the same as Small Business Act loans?
I think it is, so
Okay.
just go ahead and check the box and enter an amount.
Okay.
Again, we don't think that's going to be taken into consideration for allocating funds. We just did not anticipate having such a low number of people applying and qualifying.
Okay. Some people asked for a little bit more information about the LEA CARES Act. However, Dr. Donna Brown provided very succinctly that it has to do with the ESSER and GEAR dollars coming from your local school district. So unless you want to expand on her answer, I think she got that for us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct.
Monica has 2 LEAs and only one allowed us to use our CARES money. How can we include this info as the line is a yes or no? I mean, if one allowed you to, then I would assume she just marks yes.
Just mark yes, that is correct.
Okay. I answered this question, but I'll answer it again, or you can tell me if I didn't phrase it right. If someone missed the intent to participate, will they be able to apply now? My answer was no, the intent has closed.
Yeah, we needed that information for calculating allocations and eligibility, so that is correct.
Okay, Christy, sounds like we have to spend for reimbursement by March 19th. What is the turnaround to get reimbursement? That is a significant amount to be out in funding. Okay, so Christy, this is the EANS 2 is not about reimbursement. You will tell KDE, you'll go search for your quotes or use the MOA. You'll tell KDE what you would want, and KDE will use your allocation to purchase those things for you. Correct, David?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Let's see, Jen Burba, making sure we did participate in EANS 1 and we got the PPP loan, but we're still okay to move forward. Yes, I think, yeah, David has said yes.
Yeah, the
Go ahead.
only clause to that is if you are participating in a Small Business Act program after the issuance of the American Rescue Plan, that would knock you out of participation. But if you participated prior, even under other emergency funded programs, you are allowed to participate. That's correct.
And let's see, what kinds of items are allowable for transportation expenses? Can we purchase buses?
No, you would not be able to purchase buses. You could
Lease.
Yeah, you could lease, and actually KDE would have to lease for you. One of the clauses of these programs is that the Kentucky Department of Education has to provide the services for you. So we have to purchase or lease or contract with vendors to provide services. So we may be able to, provide things such as a lease for a bus for social distancing, for example. We may be able to contract with a vendor to provide some transportation. So those are the types of things we would be able to do under transportation.
Okay, and then a follow-up question about transportation. Is there funding for transportation involved? Yes, I think that's category 11. And but again, could we buy a van for field trips? No, we can't buy you a vehicle, just as David just explained.
It might be possible that we could rent something for, extracurricular activities, for example, to allow for social distancing. I do want to just step back and say, again, you need to make a justification and assure that your proposed budget does align to your COVID-19 impacts on the program details page. But, that's something we could probably negotiate.
Okay. Vicki wants to know if they would be able to request the additional bus service or renting of it from the same bus company they currently use. What are the chances of them being able to use that same company? And I think that just goes to if it's on the MOA. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, and I would ask if that is currently being funded through EANS 1, maybe. If it is, yeah, I would say if it is, it's a good possibility we could use the same vendor.
Okay. Neil wants to know part-time cleaning services, water drinking systems that refill water bottles allowable. So Neil, the same things that were allowable in EANS 1, barring reimbursements, you'd have to follow those same guidelines. And I don't believe cleaning services were allowable. Janitorial services are not allowable. However, items that you need for that machinery, that's allowable, correct, David?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay,
The
and
actual services for someone to come in and clean, those were disallowed by USAID, but the products to clean with, those are allowed. And as far as things that attach to buildings, if you participated under EANS 1, you'll remember that things that would be considered a permanent structure that would improve the value of your property or building would not be allowed. And essentially, we told people that if it has to be installed and then it would leave a hole somewhere, or it would require construction or repairs to fix when it's removed, would not be allowable. KDE does retain the title to all the things that are purchased. So, you know, if you say, hey, we want a new air conditioning system, well, that would be considered a capital improvement, a permanent part of the building, which would require a repair if we ever had to pick it up. Like if you sold the building, or if it needed to be replaced somewhere down the line. We own the title to that, and if we came to pick it up and it left a hole, a permanent hole in the building that would require some sort of repair or construction to remedy, that would not be an allowable type of expense.
okay, David, we are coming up on only about 9 minutes left, and there are quite a few more questions. So I don't know whether you had anything else you needed to present, and we can go through the chat box and write answers later, or do you have 9 minutes for questions?
Let's do this. Let me finish up with going through the rest of Gmap. It's pretty simple, and then we'll take as many questions as we can take.
Okay.
Okay, so once you've created your budget and you're ready to submit your application, it's fairly simple. You're going to return to your sections page. You're going to select draft completed and select confirm. Okay, now you're going to see I have a few messages over here that are errors. For example, in my budget, it's going to tell me my proposed budget of $11,000 is less than my allocated amount. So in order to submit, I'm going to have to review that. I'm going to have to budget the remaining $731,000. Okay, because if I try to move forward with submission, well, it tells me no validations were found. But anyway, if there is an error, it is going to actually stop you from submitting the application in full. Let me see here. Okay, I think that's really it. So we are asking you to budget down to 0 here. Okay, I'm ready for any other questions that you might have. Elise, you might be on mute.
Sorry, David.
That's okay.
Can we choose our vendors? I think if you do that, you're looking at competitive bid out process, and it's better if at all possible to use what's on the MOA with the quick turnaround time, unless Kay wants to ring in and say something. How long would the lease on the bus last for?
If we have it in place before the 6-month deadline, you could budget for cost through the end of the program period. So that's through 2024.
If we lease buses or vans, can our request include the cost of the CDW driver?
I would say, that would be part of the transportation cost. If if you do not have someone in-house that is certified to drive a bus, then yeah, I would think, that could be part of the necessary cost.
Okay, thank you. With employment opportunities, can we write a contract for multiple years to procure that money, or is it only a year at a time?
So Kay, you might want to jump in on this, but I think you could budget through the end of the grant period, 2024.
Yeah, we recommend, and we'll be in the staffing area, the contracts will only be per school year, but you can go ahead and budget for the life of for the term of the grant.
Mm-hmm.
But the contracts themselves are only a year in nature.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a really good question for Joanne, from Joanne. With EANS 1, the guideline for purchases was KDE would be able to come in and take title of any items purchased. For the EANS 2 round, I noticed that windows are permitted. Could you clarify if this is permitted or if there are any restrictions if we pursue window replacements? EANS 1 window repairs, right?
Window repairs are allowed, so upgrade, resealing windows. Things of that nature. A full replacement, just as it would be in the first round, would not be allowable. That would be considered a capital improvement.
Okay. Miranda said sort of the same thing. I saw windows on the list. I would like to know more about windows. Okay, so I think David's answered that one. Are learning platforms needed for online distance learning covered in any of these sections? I can answer that.
Go ahead.
You could look at EdTech category 8, or you could look at category 9, which discusses specifically updating curriculum or using new curriculum. And if you choose to go with a new curriculum and it's in print and it's copywritten, there'll be another letter we'll probably have to include, Kay, with the MOA, where schools have to sign off on that and get the company to sign off on it. It comes from Allen's group, but those things could be procurable.
Yeah.
Could we repair poor HVAC systems?
You can, yes, you can have them repaired, but not replaced.
In the interest of budgeting to zero, can the budget exceed available funds?
It cannot. Really, when you get your notice, your final notice of amount, it will probably say something like your budget is up to this amount. So you should budget to zero, but it cannot go beyond that particular amount that you're assigned at this point.
Okay, Vince, back on transportation, does renting school buses for social distancing for field trips covered? Would it be considered covered?
So I would say this, the purpose of the field trip would need to be connected closely to your impacts. I think, just in general, transportation for, to allow for social distancing, and whether that's to get kids to and from schools or even for extracurricular, which we have approved, would be okay, but it does need to connect back to the impact statement that you provide. So details there, I think, are important.
Okay. Jen Burba, this is quite a bit more money than I anticipated. The email indicates that our proposed budget and narratives are to be in by December 3rd. Is this accurate? That's only a few days to figure it out.
That is correct. Kay, do you have any other comments on that?
No, the January 3rd date has to allow for us to review those budgets and work with you to make sure that the categories that you have budgeted do align with your narrative, and if we need to switch funds around. again, my recommendation is to use up that budget as best you can, whether it be in services to students through staffing, to after school tutors or extra instructional assistants. I know some folks are having a hard time finding bodies to fill those positions, but that could change over the next couple of years. And I do understand that, there's only so much cleaning supplies that you can store. But again, try to think ahead and try to, figure out how you can utilize those funds. And if there's no way, that you can't, I don't want to use the word pad a category, but that's essentially what you're doing. Is if you could have everything in the world you wanted, where would you put that money? Use it up. If you aren't able to make those procurement requests, it'll just go back to the governor's office in a few months, and there's no harm. But we really encourage you not to leave money on the table.
Yeah, Kay, I just want to point out that the deadlines we've put in place, they, except for like filling out the intent and the application, we are held to some very strict statutory deadlines for getting the application open, for having it approved. Those are two 30-day timelines. And then spending of funds, obligating of funds as well. Those are all statutory deadlines. So I just want to say we haven't made those up, but we have had to put some limits on the intent and the application, just to allow for us to be able to meet those other statutory deadlines.
Okay, I just want to clarify, Kay. Jen was asking the budget narratives have to be submitted by December 3rd, and then Christy had the follow-up question about January 3rd is when we'll be told that we've been approved, or will there be a sooner date? So, yes, David, correct. They've got to have the budgets into us by the 3rd, so we have time enough to go through the 59 and approve or send you back to revision, that kind of thing, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. You should know by January the 3rd whether or not you're approved. I mean, Elise and a couple other of our staff members are going to be working on those. So if they get them approved, in 10 days from now, you'll know by then. But yes, by January 3rd.
Okay. I don't know. Do you want to keep taking questions? We're at 1:33. It's up to you.
I can stay on, Kay. Anybody else that needs to get off? I mean, I'm okay to stay on.
Okay. Let's see. Can the budget be proposed and expended to end at the end of 2022 if our school plans to close at that point?
Yeah, and that's a good example of why we do inventory and tag items, because once that school were to close, we'd have to collect those items since we do retain title to those. But yeah, they could go through the end of 2022 if that's as much time as you have or need.
Vivian asks, in terms of new curriculum, do we have any idea what the approved vendors are, or is there more flexibility there? Basically, are we limited to only those that KDE uses now? So Vivian, if it's copywritten material and you can get that company to sign off, I cannot remember, I'm sorry, what the letter is that Alan has. Other schools, I don't know if Joanne's on this call and she remembers, they had to do it for the FOSS curriculum. But if it's an approved copywritten curriculum that is not religious in nature, you should be able to get what you need. It's not the same. It preempts the MOA is the way it was explained to me by Alan, or it's exempt from the MOA. What about a lease for new phone system for communicating with families? I think that goes back to making a case for it with COVID-19, correct, David?
Yeah, again, you have to connect to impact. The real purpose of EANS 1 and EANS 2 is to serve immediate needs. through those allowable categories, you'd really have to make a case for that, you know, right offhand. It's a difficult question to answer, but there'd have to be a very strong case for that, I would think.
Okay. Melissa, are there restrictions, guidelines, limitations on curriculum? We are at a Christian school. Yes, there are some guidelines and limitations. David, I'm going to let you say exactly what those are because you probably have the language down to a sentence.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you would be prohibited from providing religious-based material. So yes, I mean, essentially in a nutshell, that is what the restriction is.
Okay. And I think also Ed came back and decided socio-emotional learning as well, correct? That's restricted?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. The submission deadline then, is it 12/3/21 or 1/3/22?
Submission is,
12/3/21.
that's correct.
So we have 3 days to submit our narratives and budget. Yes, ma'am. Online textbooks, they're online. It's online curriculum as long as it's not religious in nature or emotional learning. You could go for ed tech as your category 8. But if you're using it specifically to address learning loss, you might put it at 9. If we are using it for staffing, when will we receive the funds to pay them? Stephanie is new to this, I think. I'm right. I might be confused.
Okay, I can address that.
Why don't you do that one, Kay? Thank you.
Sure. So all staffing requests are handled through the Ohio Valley Educational Co-op, and the employee, or if you hire an instructional assistant, or if you need an interventionist or whatever, that person is actually an employee of Ovec. You sign off on their timesheet, report that to Ovec, and the payroll is handled at Ovec. So they take care of the taxes, insurance, fringe benefits, etc. So if you have a particular person who you think qualifies for the position, there is an online portal through Ovec that they can apply for that position. And we do our best to try to hook you up with people in your area that you are familiar with. Otherwise, you can interview folks and make other choices. But all of the hiring goes through Ovec.
Okay. I've lost my. Oh, could we? You guys are jumping in on making so many questions here. I'm losing it. Oh, okay. I'm just going to remember the question. If we are using a current curriculum, would we be allowed to buy updated editions of that curriculum? So, David, I think maybe you need to answer that one about, is that supplanting or that's supplementing, or does it matter?
No, there's no supplement, not supplant here. So yes,
okay.
you could basically provide extra licenses or an updated version of that. So yes.
If we need technical assistance or questions answered, who is the contact person or number? So you could reach out to elise.crisp@education.ky.gov if it's about some of these curriculum questions or categories or what's allowable. If you had staffing questions, that would be k.kennedy2@education. The rest of it. And if you just have program questions, that we can't answer, we can forward them to David. How's that sound, David?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm trying to type those into the chat box here.
It's always best to send at first reach out, send an email, and then if we need to do a follow-up phone conversation, we'll arrange that. But to let us know and understand who's out there and who has the question, email is always a good first step. And we will make sure it gets to the right person. So if you only remember, one email address, that's fine. We'll get it to the right person and get it straightened out.
All right, Kay, could you please take over the chat for me? I'm so sorry, but I do have to jump off, David, and there are still some pretty good questions in here.
Okay.
If you can do it. Thanks, everybody. If you need me, reach out via email, and I will get back with you as soon as I can. Kay, are you able to take over the chat?
I am.
Thank you, ma'am.
So
Appreciate
I'm
it.
not, yeah, I'm not sure exactly where we stepped off, but
Oh.
I see the question about the contact name, so that's fine. I'll go to the,
Oh, well, I'll answer. Would teachers pay teachers' materials be allowed? Yes, Jill. That's a ed tech thing we approved and EANS one for some people. Okay, so you can go to where do we find the MOA question. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Talk to you in a bit, David.
Okay. Where do we find the MOA? I'm still going down the line here. Here we go. Where do we find the MOA for the vendor list? We will get that posted once we get final confirmation from our purchasing folks. So the master agreement list, there we have a couple of them. I know there's a separate one for technology. There'll be a couple for products in general. There's a furniture one, I know for sure. So we'll get that out there where you can have a look. In the expedience of contracting, can you put that link here? I don't have it right in front of me, so probably we will either send a follow-up email or just check the EANS 2 website. We do have a separate website set up for EANS 2. Most of you have been to the original EANS website, which still pertains to EANS 1, but we'll also send some things to just EANS 2.
Yeah,
okay.
Kay, I put a link to that web page in the qualification email that everybody got.
Okay, it's in the qualification email. Good.
Yes.
If there are current staff members that we cannot keep under our own budget, can we move them to Ovec? As long as you can tie it to addressing learning loss, we cannot replace your payroll. We would not supply, for example, if you can't afford 2 third grade teachers, but you have 50 kids that you need to educate, we can't pay for the second, third grade teacher. That has to be under your own budget. But if you need assistance in those grades, or if you need an interventionist for reading or math, for example, then those certainly can be obtained through the EANS program. Let's see where we are now. Staffing would be through the 2024 school year. Yes, you could use EANS 1 funding to go through 2023, and then EANS 2 goes out another year. So if you didn't request it under EANS 1, you do have the ability to go from now through 2024. So that's that. And then the link to Ovec, I think you might be correct on that, ovec.org. You can also just do a Google search on Ohio Valley Educational Co-op. But as we get further along in the process, as a requester, you would not reach out directly to Ovec. The process for hiring staff is to submit a request to KDE. We check it against your budget. Then we send the request to Ovec, and then Ovec reaches out to you, the principal, or the hiring manager. Ovec will reach out to you once it goes through the approval process at KDE. So the next question is, does Ovec offer health benefits to anyone contracted? If you meet the terms of that level of employment that requires health insurance be provided, in other words, part-time folks usually don't get that option. So if it's a full-time person, then there are benefits involved. But Ovec explains all of that to you. And the last step in the process is that they give you a cost of contract sheet for you to sign off on so that you know exactly what amount is going to hit your budget. You may have budgeted, $20,000 for an instructional aid, but then you find out that with benefits and all that stuff, the person actually costs $22,538.62. You will have that detailed on a cost of contractor worksheet, and you sign off on that before any hiring is made, so you have the exact information. And I see Katie has mentioned on here, we've used Ovec. They are fantastic and so easy to work with. We appreciate that comment. We find that to be true as well. And I'm glad that folks who've had the opportunity to take advantage of Ovec have been happy with that. So good to hear. The follow-up question, is a counselor considered an acceptable employment? I think that gets to this whole social and emotional part of it, which is not covered. But if you can, work your budget around where you can provide an instructional aid or an interventionist that frees up an area of your budget that could be covered by EANS, then maybe your own budget could cover the guidance counselor. So creativity is not frowned upon. We just want to keep you within the white lines. I don't see any other questions at this time. We will read back through the questions if there's anything that we felt like we missed. I think you can expect a newsletter as we get closer to the to the January 3rd opening or the notice of approval for your award amount. So in the meantime, you've got the emails where you can contact us. I'll turn it back over to you, David.
I think we have one more come in, and we'll take that question and then we'll wrap up for the day. We just want to say, feel free to reach out to us at any point, even if it's multiple times in the next few days. We are available to take your questions. Kay, I would like to say tomorrow I will be out of the office just for a medical procedure. So please, tomorrow, if you have questions, or tonight, please copy a Lease and Kay if you send those to me. I may be out Thursday morning, not sure yet, but we want to make sure that you have timely answers. So it is very beneficial if you can at least copy the three of us on any email you send in. So a couple of questions. Is it possible that we'll get a document that explains a little better on some of the sticky stuff like curriculum? I would say if you have individual questions like that, send them directly to us, and probably will be more time efficient and give you a more accurate answer than a general FAQ, for example. What about private school educational assessment services? So I'd have to, that might be something I need to think about more fully. If you could send us a question maybe through email that gives us some more details on what you're thinking, that might help us out a little bit to provide an answer to you. I think we're going to wrap it up, Kay. So we thank everybody. Again, reach out if you have questions. Let us know what you need, and we're always happy to help, and thank you all very much.